How's it going? Chuck Hewitt here with Quiet Cat e-bikes. Today we're going to talk about unboxing and assembling your Apex Pro. Cool, so first thing we're going to want to do is just go ahead and cut this box open. If you look on here, there's quite a few staples, so just kind of watch the staples on your hands. As we fold this box open, we're going to want to take a look inside and just kind of have a quick inspection of the bike, make sure that there wasn't anything that got bumped around during shipping. Nice, once we have the box open, we're just going to kind of take a look inside, again checking for any damage that might have occurred in shipping. Looks pretty good here. As we look in here, you'll see you can reach in. We're going to find a battery inside the box. We can take that, set it aside. We'll have some cardboard shipping protectors in here. We can go ahead and pull these out as well to get a little closer look at the bike. And last thing we're looking for is if I reach down inside the box, I should find a Quiet Cat accessory box. That's going to have a few parts and pieces that we need to assemble the bike. Cool, once we've checked the inside of the box here and make sure there's no damage, we're going to want to go ahead and take the bike out of the box. It's best to find a friend to help you out. This is an easier two-person lift than it is one-person lift, and we can set the box aside. Perfect. Once you found a friend to help you lift the bike out of the box, go ahead and grab each end of the bike. We're going to lift it right up. Perfect. And set it on the ground next to the box. Nice. Once you've got the bike out of the box and on the ground, it's best to find a bike stand. Bike stands make it a little bit easier to assemble. If you don't have a bike stand, that's okay though. You can do this on the ground. For today's video, we're going to put this in a stand just so it's a little bit easier to see what pieces need to go where. Perfect. Once you've got the bike in the stand up off the ground, it's a little bit easier to access the packaging. Next step here is we want to go ahead and remove all of the packaging. Again, just take your time and be careful as you cut the zip ties to make sure that you don't scratch the frame and you don't accidentally clip any of the wires that are coming up off of the handlebar. As you get to the front wheel, just be careful with the front wheel. It's best to hang on to the front wheel as you clip the zip ties so it doesn't drop to the ground or scratch the bike as you take it off. Once we have all the packaging removed from the bike, we're ready to start putting it together. First thing we're going to do is take out that accessory box. We're going to open this up and we'll find some helpful tools in here. So inside this box, you'll find an assortment of tools. This should be most of the tools that you need to get your Apex Pro together and running. We'll talk about each of these tools as we pull them out to use them for the bike. For now though, we'll set this aside on the bench. So first thing we'll do is we'll look at putting the handlebars on the bike here. You can see the handlebars are just going to kind of lay loose once we remove that packaging off, and they're going to roll right into position. So what we need to do is remove these 4 bolts here on the stem. It's a 4mm bolt. Perfect. So first step to attach the handlebars is we're going to take all of these bolts off of the stem here. Again, this is a 4mm bolt. You can find that 4mm wrench in that accessory box that came with the bike. We can spin these right off, and as we pull that last bolt off, we can hang on to that piece right there. I'm going to set these bolts aside. I'm going to take the handlebars and I'm going to swing them up into position and slide that display right out of the way. Once I've got that piece back in there, I can line those bolts up using my 4mm wrench. And I'm just going to start the threads on each of these. So I'm just going to get a few threads in there on every bolt before I tighten anything down. This display, that screen, should swing right out of the way so you can access those bottom bolts if you need to. Once those bolts are all snug, you can spin this handlebar into position. You can see these little yellow indicator lines here to help line things up. If we look at this big main arrow right here, that's going to be more or less in the middle of the stem. We're going to also want to make sure that it's centered side to side. So right about there, it looks like it's in the middle. And then I'll take my 4mm wrench and I'll go ahead and tighten that right down. You don't need to make this super tight. It's about 6 Newton meters or so, which is more or less hand tight. Just be careful that you don't over tighten these. You don't really have to wrench on these as hard as you can. Perfect. I'll just give these one final snug. About like that. 2, 3, and 4. Perfect. And those are our handlebars attached and ready to go. So the next step is going to be to install the front wheel. For the Apex Pro, we have the KKE inverted fork. It has a through axle, which is a little bit different than the Apex Sport. If you have an Apex Sport, it has a little bit different fork on it, and it's got a solid axle, and we'll get to that next. For the Apex Pro and the inverted KKE fork, You'll see it's just got a shipping plastic on there to start with. That's just to help keep it safe as it's shipping to you. You can just pop that right off and set it aside. For the through axle, we're going to need our 4mm wrench and our 6mm wrench. Again, that came in that accessories box that you've got. What I'm going to look at first are the pinch bolts here on the fork. I'm going to take my 4mm bolt, just make sure those are loose. I don't need to take them all the way out, just need to make sure that they're not tight. Perfect, all 4 of those are a little bit loose. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 6mm wrench and I'm going to loosen the end cap on this bolt. It'll slide right out, and then I can take this axle right out of the fork. Just a note, when you're removing the through axle, you may find that both end caps of the axle have come out. That's not a big deal. You can see there's an end cap on both ends of this axle. I like to keep one of them threaded all the way in, usually on the non-drive side or the brake side of the bike. I'm going to set those aside. The last thing we need to do is take a look at our brakes here and just remove this little shipping plastic. That's just separating our brake pads, again, to protect it during shipping. Once we have the axle out and the pinch bolts loosened, I can take my front wheel in one hand and I can take that through axle in the other. What I'm going to do is just put this wheel, I'm going to make sure that I line it up with those brakes, and then I'm going to lift it right up into the dropout. You can see I'm going to line it up with that non-drive side first. It's going to hold in here. Because this is an inverted fork, you'll find that the right side may not be in alignment, but it's pretty easy. All I need to do is just grab that and kind of push it into the dropout to line it up, and I can push my axle all the way through the wheel. Once that axle is all the way through the wheel, I'm going to find my 6mm wrench and the end cap from the other side. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it right back into the through axle. I'm going to spin that thing tight. This just needs to be snug. Again, this doesn't need to be over tightened. I'm just going to snug it right up, and that's all the more I need. I'm going to set that 6mm aside, and now I'm going to come back and I'm going to tighten down all 4 pinch bolts to lock that axle into place. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. Front wheel installed and ready to go. So to install the front wheel on my Apex Sport model, I'm going to grab the front wheel and I'm going to grab that 15mm wrench out of the accessories box. I want to take the front wheel and I'm going to put it up into the fork. I'm going to make sure that I line my rotor up with the brakes, and you can see that I have a solid axle with a washer and a nut. I'm going to make sure both the washer and the nut are on the outside of the fork, and I can slide this wheel up into the dropouts. I want to hold that to the top of the dropouts. I can tighten that nut with my fingers on both sides, get it snug. I'm going to keep holding up on that wheel, and I'm going to tighten that nut. First a bit on the left, then a bit on the right. I'm going to snug those down all the way. Again, I don't need to put a ton of force on that, just make sure it's rather snug, not going to move anywhere, and that should be the front wheel installed on your Apex Sport. Next up, it's time to install the pedals. The pedals are left and right specific. If we look on the cranks here, you should see an R or an L, and on the pedals, you'll find in the accessory box, you'll find the corresponding R or L. It's important to match those up. The right-hand sides are right-hand threaded. The left pedals are left-hand threaded. Before we install our pedal, if you have a little bit of grease around, it's good to just put some light grease on those threads. If you don't have any, that's okay. But if you have some around your garage, I'm just going to put just a little bit of grease on these threads just to help to keep things from seizing up. So as I install the pedal, again, I'm matching the right to the right pedal. Again, this one is right-hand threaded. I'm just going to start with my fingers to thread that pedal into the crank. Perfect. Once I've got the thread started in here, I can grab that 15mm wrench that came in the accessories box, and I can use that to go ahead and tighten that pedal onto the crank. Again, this is just snug, doesn't need to be over tightened, just snug will do. Perfect. Again, to install the left pedal, I'm going to make sure that I line up the left with the left. It's a left-hand thread. I'm going to start with a little bit, just kind of tighten it in there using my fingers to get it started. Perfect. Once I have those threads started, I can take that 15mm wrench from the accessories box and I can tighten that pedal down. Again, just snug, doesn't need to be over tight, and that's our left pedal good to go. The last thing we want to do for our Apex Pro is to install the battery. First thing we're going to find are the keys to be able to unlock the lock core here. The keys are going to be zip tied to the handlebars. So all I'm going to do is just snip those keys off the handlebars. And to get ready to install the battery, I'm just going to go ahead and put the key into the lock core and make sure it's turned to the left. So as I install this battery, sometimes the lock core is a little sticky for a brand new bike and it doesn't want to go that last piece. If I hold that battery and turn that key to the right, it should move past and allow me to release that. It'll get just a little bit looser, but the first time you install the battery, it might just be a little tight. Once we grab the battery out of the packaging, we'll bring it over to the bike. If you take a look at your battery, you'll find the 4 discharge ports on one side, and you'll find the charge indicator on the other side. We're going to make sure that those charge ports are down. They're going to plug right into the bottom of the bike here. I'm going to slide the battery in, line those ports up, make sure that this is turned all the way to the left, and my battery will click right into the bike. I'm going to turn the key to the right and remove it, and now my battery is locked into the bike. While we're here, if you need to take the battery out of the bike to charge it or bring it inside your house or a vehicle, we'll show you how to do that quickly. We're going to put the key in, turn that lock core to the left. We're going to pull on this battery release lever right here, and that's going to release the battery from the frame, and I can pull that battery right out of my Apex Pro. One last thing we want to check before we go out on our test ride is the tire pressure of our Apex Pro. Some tires may ship a little bit lower pressure than others. We recommend a tire pressure between 12 and 18 pounds per square inch, depending on the terrain you're riding. So let's just go ahead and check those tires and put a little air in them if needed. Perfect. I'll set this one to 15. We'll do the same for the front. Perfect. So that's our tire pressure set to 15 psi. Now we're ready to power on the bike. All right, our Apex Pro is now fully assembled. Battery is installed. Last thing I'm going to do is make sure that the bike powers on. So I'm going to come up to the keypad, give a long hold on that power button. My screen should pop up with our QuietKat logo, and then your dashboard should pull right up. Our bike is good to go. It is assembled, installed, and ready for a test ride. Thanks for tuning in to our assembly video today. Hopefully everything went smoothly for you. If it didn't, that's okay. Feel free to reach out to our customer support team. We're there to help you along the way. Remember, you've got the Quick Start Guide as a great resource, or you can find us on quietkat.com.